All right, so by now you should be familiar with all of the order view commands that we're going to be working with in our scripts. But in today's lesson, we're going to write an actual script that automates a trailing stop loss. So our script is going to handle everything. It's going to calculate the trailing stop loss based on the current ATR. We need to tell the script whether we're going long or short and tell the script which bar we want to trail our stop loss from. But once we've done that, the script will automatically calculate our stop loss. And as it rises or falls, in the case of a short trade, the script will generate alerts that will tell AutoView where to put our stop loss so that we can fully automate our trade management. Let's get started with a blank script, and we're going to start completely from scratch and write out a trailing stop loss script. So first things first, I'm going to change my title to AutoView trailing stop, and I'm going to set overlay to true. So I want this stop loss to be drawn on my actual chart. Next up, we need to get some user input. I'm going to get several inputs here. The first one is going to be a trail type. So this is whether we're trailing long or short. We'll use the input function here for this. I'm going to give this a title. I'm going to give it a type. I'm going to give it a default value, and that will do for now. I'm going to copy this line of code a couple of times because we're going to get several inputs from the user, and this will speed up the process a little bit. So the first one is trail type. This determines whether the script calculates a long or short trailing stop. So the title here is going to be called trail type. The type is going to be input.string. The default value is going to be long, and we need to set a couple of string options here. The way to do that is using the square bracket parentheses to write out a list. So the list here is going to be just long, comma, and short. So these are our two input options for this particular setting. The next input is going to be our structure lookback, which is how far back to detect the swing lows to trail our stop loss below. So that is going to be called just lookback. Its type is going to be input.integer, and the default value for this one is going to be 7. So we're going to look back 7 bars to find highs and lows to trail our stop loss below or above. The next input is just going to be our ATR length. So here I need to call this ATR length. The type is also going to be input.integer, and the default value is just going to be the default look back for any ATR, which is usually 14. The next input is our bar index. So this is going to be the number of the bar that we're going to trail our stop loss on. So every bar in our chart has a bar index. And if I comment out these two lines here and change our plot to bar underscore index and save the script, call it AutoView trailing stop, save and add to chart. This blue number here is our bar index. So this is the number of bars that have printed since the very first bar on our chart. So the first bar on our chart, the index is 0, so you can see on the left there, and then 1, 2, 3, and so on, all the way up to the current bar, which is 21,332. So there are currently 21,332 bars loaded onto our chart. If we wanted to trail our stop loss from, let's say we went long somewhere down here, you just hover your mouse over that bar and read the number in the top left there, so 21,264. If we wanted to trail from this bar here, we'd write in 21,264, and then the script will calculate our trailing stop from that bar. So this is one way to tell the script where we entered our trade and want to trail from. When we finish writing the script, I'll also add a time version so we can select the time and date, which is a much better way of doing this. But for example purposes, the bar index will work just fine so that we can quickly write the script and we can add in the time, date, checkout later. I'm just going to call this bar index. The type is going to be input.integer, and the default value is going to be 0. Then we need 2 more inputs here. The second last input is going to be our bar time, which we'll come to later. So I'll just comment that out for now, and we'll come back to that later. The final input is going to be our broker. So this is for telling AutoView which broker we want to execute our trades through. So I'm just going to call this broker/exchange. This is also relevant or applicable to crypto markets. If you're using AutoView to automate your crypto trading, you can input your crypto broker in this input here, and that will tell AutoView to execute your trades on the crypto markets. However, today's lesson is focused on the Forex markets, and I do not have any experience trading crypto through AutoView, as there are other I believe, better methods to do that out there through third parties. But in terms of Forex trading, I have not found an easier way to auto trade Forex than through AutoView. So that's why we are focused on that today. So the type for this one is input.string, and the default value is going to be Oanda practice. So we're going to be defaulting to our Oanda demo account. But if I save the script here, later on when the script is finished, the user, or you, if you're using this in your own trading, can remove practice from this broker exchange. And when you click OK and set your alerts, the AutoView plugin will now trade through live money Oanda account. So that's the purpose of having that input there. Makes it easier. That way we don't have to modify our code if we want to flip between a demo account and a real money account. So those are all of our inputs except for bar time, which we'll come back to at the end of the script. Let's move on to the actual meat of this script. So the first thing I need to do is get the current ATR. Oops, can't type today. ATR equals inbuilt ATR, and then we pass our ATR length parameter. The next thing we need to do is calculate our trailing stop loss. So I'm going to declare trailing variables here. So we need two variables here to work with. We need one VAR variable, which is going to save our trail price. So our actual trailing price, by default, it's going to be initialized as 0.0. And I'll explain why we do that in a minute. And the next variable we need is a temporary trail price that we can assign to whatever the current distance is from whichever bar we're calculating our current trailing stop from. We can compare the current potential trailing stop to our saved trailing stop. And if the new temporary trailing stop is more profitable than the current trailing stop, then we update our current trailing stop to the temporary trailing stop. This will make more sense in 1 second when we get down to our calculation code. So for this, I'm going to set this to trail type equals and then long question mark. If our trail type is set to long, then we want to set our temporary trailing stop to the lowest low over our structure look back period, which is 7 bars by default. So if the user has set trail type to long in the settings menu, then our temporary trailing price will be initialized as the lowest low over the past 7 bars or whatever the user set this to. Otherwise, if we have not set trail type to long, that means we've set it to short, and we need to reference the highest high over our structure look back period. And we also need to subtract the ATR from the lowest low to get our trailing stop price. And we need to add the ATR onto our short trailing stop because that will be above price action. So this will give us our ATR trailing stop price. The next thing we need to do is check if the user is going long or short or trailing long or short. We need to check if we need to update our stored or saved trailing stop loss. So let's do that now. I'm going to call this check for trailing stop update. And this is going to be an if statement. Our first if statement is going to check if the current bar index is greater than or equal to the bar index setting from up here. And we also want to make sure the bar index is not equal to 0, because if it's set to 0, that means it's disabled, which is the default setting. If we don't do this, then it will just start trailing from the very first bar that loads onto our chart, which we don't want. The next thing we need to do is trail our long stop, and that will require another if statement. And this if statement, this is a nested if statement within the scope of this if statement. So we have this first if statement, then we have this second if statement, and then we're going to have a second if statement that trails our short stop. And both of these next if statements will only be executed if the bar index is greater than or equal to the bar index we've set in our settings menu. Hopefully that makes sense. If all of this is alien to you, then I suggest you check out my free PineScript Basics course before you start playing around with this sort of code. But I'm going to assume that most of you are familiar with these more advanced concepts in PineScript, and we're just going to move on to write our trailing stop code. So the first thing we need to do is check if our temporary trail price is greater than our saved trail price, or check if our trail price is equal to 0.0. So remember, VAR variables are stored across all of our bars and only initialized once. So on the very first bar in our chart, trail price will be created in our script with a value of 0.0. So this check here will check if the temporary trailing price, the current lowest low minus the ATR, lowest low of the X amount of bars minus the ATR, is greater than our existing trailing price, or we have not yet set a trailing price, and the user has set trail type to long, then we want to trail our long stop in this code. Remember, you need to indent your if statements by 4 spaces or a tab to make sure that your script will compile. So now we have our next block of code, which is going to set our trail price to our temporary trail price, since it is in fact higher than our existing trailing stop. And then we need to trail our short stop by doing exactly the same thing. So if T trail price is less than our saved trail price, or our trail price is equal to 0.0 and trail type equals short, then we want to set our trail price to our temporary trail price. That's all we need to do. We are now calculating our trailing stop and updating it as needed. And so let's quickly plot this to the chart. So plot trail price, we'll give it a color of color.red, and I'll title this trailing stop. I always like to comment everything that I'm doing so that it makes my scripts more readable in the future when I come back to them. So it's a good habit to get into, even though it's obvious what this is doing. I like to comment it anyway. And now if we save the script, this should compile without any errors, theoretically, if I know what I'm doing. There we go. And now let's say we want to trail our stop loss from this lowest green bar here. If I hover my mouse over that bar, that has a bar index of 21264. So we come up here and write 21264, and we've already got our trail type set to long by default. So now if I click OK, the script should calculate our trailing stop loss, which it is doing. Perfect. The one last thing we need to do is detect when it gets hit and basically stop drawing it, stop calculating it, because it is no longer relevant. So let's do that next. To do that, I'm going to create another couple of if statements. I'm going to comment this one and say if long stop is hit, reset our trailing stop. So if trail price is not equal to 0.0 and the low of the current bar is less than or equal to our trailing stop price and our trail type is set to long, then we want to set trail price to NA. I'm just going to set it to NA, and it will no longer draw onto the chart. So let's copy this block of code here, paste that in, change this to short. If short trail stop is hit, reset trail stop. We need to change this to the high, because now we're checking if price action has hit our upper trailing stop, our short trailing stop. So is the high of the current bar greater than or equal to trail price? And are we trailing a short trade? Then we also want to set this to NA. You could combine these two if statements into one if statement if you wanted to, by just putting a bracket around this and a bracket around this and copying that up here and writing OR. But I'm not going to do that today, simply because I have my screen resolution set so high that this is going to draw off the screen. So I'll leave these separate for now. Plus it makes the script a little more readable. That is something to consider maybe when you're writing much longer scripts, but this is a short script, so it doesn't matter that we're being a little bit inefficient here with our if statement. So now if I save the script and do exactly the same thing, it should compile no problems. Bar index 21264, 21264. Now it should stop drawing when it's hit. There we go. So now we start drawing our trailing stop below this green bar, and it only changes our trailing stop if the new trailing stop is higher than the current one. So this red line only updates when it's being moved upwards to lock in profits on a long trade, and eventually it gets hit by a price action and stops drawing. So far so good. Let's test the short version of this. Let's say we went short from here. Let's say we went short on this candle up the top here, just for example purposes. 20968, 20968, and we change our long to short, trail type to short, click OK, and this is working just fine as well. Now we could remove this red line here, which is just drawing from 0. It's jumping up to whatever our trailing price is initially. I'm going to leave this on the chart just because it does actually help you identify where your trailing stop began from. but you could remove this if you wanted to, but we'll leave that as it is for now. So pretty much our trailing script is complete. All we have to do now is add our alert functionality. So let's do that now. So open up the Pine editor, come up to where our trailing stop is updated. And this is where we need to tell AutoView to update our stop loss. And we need to do this for both long and short trades. And to do this, we need to first create a couple of new variables here. So I'm going to create two new variables here called get symbol and broker. The first one is going to be VAR symbol, and it's going to be set to our current currency symbol, which in this case is AUD USD, but we need to add a / between the two tickers. If we just use siminfo.ticker ID in our AutoView alerts, Oanda will not know what market that is, because this inbuilt variable here will return AUD USD, all one word without a /. We need to put a / or an underscore in between these two currency symbols or ticker IDs in order for Oanda to recognize them. Don't ask me why, that's just how their API works. So we need to do that ourselves here, but thankfully it's pretty easy to do. All we need to do is reference siminfo.base currency, which in this case would be AUD, and then we need to plus or add or concatenate a string here, which is just going to be a /. You could also make this an underscore if you want to, but I'll leave it as a /. And then we need to add our siminfo.currency, which will be USD in this case. So this string here, this VAR symbol variable, will be a string type, and it will just be set to our base currency / our quote currency. And now we can plug this symbol variable into our alert command when we get to that. And that will tell AutoView which symbol we want to execute our commands on. So we need to create one more variable here. The reason I'm making this a VAR variable, you don't have to do that. We could just leave this as symbol, but this variable will be regenerated on every new bar in our chart. And if you're using a variable that never changes in your script, it's a good idea to set it to VAR. It's a good practice because it just increases the efficiency of your script, because your script does not need to keep generating this variable every time a new bar or new tick is detected on your chart. And it's going to be the same with our next alert parameter, which is going to be called AV prefix. This is short for AutoView prefix. And this is a prefix that's going to go in front of every single command we send to AutoView. So remember in the previous lessons where I went over our alert syntax, you need to start your alert with E equals and then your exchange or broker. And then you need to also specify your symbol, S equals and then your symbol. So that's going to be this variable, and our AV prefix is going to include both of these so that we can just tidy up our alerts a little bit when we come to writing them. So here I'm going to write out E equals, and then we're going to add or concatenate, to use the official technical jargon, our broker variable. So E equals, and then we're adding on broker. So by default, this would be a string that says E equals Oanda practice. And then I'm going to add a space between these two, or between this first parameter, and set S equals, and then add in our symbol variable, which is this guy here. And I'm also going to add a space on the very end of this string. So now when it comes time to write out our AutoView alert code, we can just reference AV prefix to save a bit of time, tidy up our script instead of having to write this out on every command that we write. And this is a good practice to get into for all of your AutoView scripts. Today's script is quite simple, so this is a bit of overkill, but I do like to show best practices in these videos, even when it's not really necessary. So we went out of our way a little bit here just to tidy up the script. Now we can add this information to our AutoView alert. Now remember, these alert functions are triggered whenever they're called. So unlike alert condition, where you need to pass in a Boolean variable, and if that Boolean variable is true or false, or true, if the variable check returns true, then alert condition is fired. In this case, we don't need a Boolean because our Boolean is our if statements. So if these both of these if statements pass, or they both return true, then our trailing price is updated and our alert is triggered if the user has set their alerts up properly, which we'll go over at the end. So this alert function takes a message parameter and a frequency parameter. We are going to set the alert frequency to alert.frequency once per bar close. We only want to trigger the alert when the bar is closed and our stop is confirmed. So our trailing stop will update in real time on the chart as the bar moves, but it will not trigger the command or the order to move our stop loss higher until that bar closes and is confirmed. We don't want to be moving our stop loss while the bar is open, because the low or high of that bar may change by the time the bar closes. So that's the purpose of this. And to make sure that that's the case, we could even add another check onto the end of these if statements that says and bar state dot is confirmed. So this means that this code will only execute if the current bar is on its final tick and closing, or is already a historical bar. So that's also a good practice to get into. We'll add that check onto the end of our trailing stop if statement. In fact, we can just add it to this top if statement, which would be a little bit more efficient there. But anyway, let's construct our order view alert, and we're going to do this by creating two new variables just to tidy this up a bit. The first variable is going to be called clear order, and this is going to be set to AV prefix plus. So this is going to use our prefix here. It's going to specify our broker, our symbol, plus we also need to tell it, we don't need a space there because we put a space on the end. So we also need to tell it C equals order, and this will cancel or clear any existing stop loss or take profit orders we have on this trade. So keep in mind it will remove your take profit as well as your stop loss. If you want to update your take profit order as well, then you'll need to add your take profit command to this alert as well, your fixed take profit. And I go over how to do that in the previous video of this series. But we're not going to do that today because today's example lesson, I want to keep it as short as possible. And today we're just basically making a trend following script that will just continue locking in our profits until price action comes down and stops us out. So it doesn't matter if we take profit here because we shouldn't have one anyway. We are just trailing our stop loss to lock in profits. So the first thing we need to do before we update our stop loss is delete it. So this will clear any open orders on this symbol. If we have any open trades on this symbol with an existing stop loss, this order will delete that stop loss. And the next order is our stop loss order, which will update our stop loss. So this also needs to start with our order view prefix. And then we need to set these parameters. We need to set our C equals position so that order view knows we're updating an existing position. We want to set our book to long, or direction to long. And then finally, we need to set our fixed stop loss price. Our FSL is the price of our current stop loss. And for this, we just need to add on our trail price variable. But if we just do this, we'll get a compile error because you cannot add a number to a string. You need to instead use the toString inbuilt function to convert this variable into a string so that order view knows how to compile this line of code. And then finally, before I add these two variables to our alert, I'm going to add the new line escape character to this first order. So this will create two orders on two separate lines that will be sent to order view, and order view will interpret these two orders separately and execute them in order. So we'll first clear our limit orders and then it will update our stop loss. So now I can add clear order plus SL order to our alert message parameter, and we're done for our long trades. We are now trailing our long trades using order view. Now if I copy all of this, I can paste it under our short trailing stop code. All I need to do is change B to short instead of long. That's literally the only change we need to make to this short trailing command. And that is it. If I save the script, we should compile without any errors. There we go. And now if I were to come up to this alert button and click on that and select our script, if I leave this condition on any alert function call, which is this alert function, and I set up my alert, then whenever my trailing stop is updated, this alert will fire. The command will be interpreted by order view, and Oanda will move my stop loss to wherever trail price is. Really powerful stuff, and this will allow you to automatically manage your trading positions while you're asleep or away from your computer, assuming you use trailing stop losses in your trading plan. Of course, you could just set up a regular trailing stop through Oanda, but that trails from the closing price, so it will trail X amount of pips from the closing price, which puts your stop loss quite frequently in the middle of nowhere, and it's extremely likely that the price will come down and stop you out. And in a bullish trend like this, where we're making higher highs and higher lows, until we break this low, the bullish trend is still intact, and price could come back down, trickle down, and then take off. So we want to be trailing our stop loss below swing lows, not just from price action arbitrarily. So that's the whole purpose of this script, the theory behind it. And it's pretty much completed. The one last thing that I will do before we wrap this lesson up, and I show you this in practice by opening a position and letting the script manage it, we're going to add our bar time input. So for this, I'm going to just call this bar time. It's going to have a type of input dot time. The default value here is going to be the inbuilt timestamp function. I need to close off that outer bracket here. And in this timestamp function, you can just give it one string, a date string. So I'm going to write out one string here, and it's just going to be 01 Jan for January 2000, and we'll set it to 1:30 p.m. at 0000 as our time zone. So plus 0000. This will set our bar time default value to the 1st of January 2000. But you could set this to anything. We could set it to the current date if you wanted to, the current year, I mean. We'll leave it as the current year. So now if I come down to our bar index check, we can add a new check to see if the current bar has passed the time that we have put in our settings menu. So here I can add another check in between these that checks, is the current bar's time greater than or equal to our bar time input parameter? And actually I need to change this to OR. So have we set bar index to something other than 0? And is the current bar index greater than or equal to whatever that is that we've set it to? If this check is met or true, then our trailing stop code will execute. Otherwise, if the user has not changed bar index from 0, but they have set a time, so we need to add a check in here, and bar index is equal to 0, so it is disabled. If I put these in their own brackets, so this is one Boolean check here, and then we check if the bar state is confirmed. Now we have two ways to set our trailing stop. So let me save the script here, make sure that compiles without any errors. There we go. And let me just tidy this up really quickly. And set this to color.blue and title it current bar index. Save that. Now, if we come up to the settings menu, let's say we want to start trailing from this low in here. I can either hover my mouse over one of these bars and get the bar index up there, which is 21283. So 21283. And now it will trail my stop loss from this bar. Or I can set bar index to 0 and I can change the date bar time to 20th of April 11:41. So 20th of April, I need to move this up a bit, 20th of April 2021 at 11:41. So 11:45, change this to 1, click OK. And there we get the same thing happening. So instead of using our bar index, we're now using our bar time to specify when to start trailing our stop loss. Both methods work. It's really just a matter of preference on which one you want to use. So that's it. We have completed our trailing stop script. I'll leave a link to this script below the video description to the code for the script. And I'll leave this video running with a example. So let's find a good market to open a trade on and watch this trailing script work in real time. All right, so let's try euro dollar. Seems to be on a tear right now. Let's try buying this market and trailing our stop loss. So I'm going to buy this market at market. I'm definitely on my demo account, so it doesn't matter how many positions we open. Let's just open whatever this is, 33,000 units. And let me set up my alerts. So I need to change the date of this to, let's say, 20th of April 2021, 12:37. Click OK. That's now trailing from here. Let me come up and set my alert auto view trailing stop script. My condition can stay like this. I don't need to mess with any of my alert actions. The script will handle everything. Now let's create the alert and let's wait and watch and see what happens. So I'll add a stop loss to this really quickly. Let's say it was down here. So 2510. Modify that. And let's watch the script update this stop loss as this red line theoretically keeps rising. I'll leave the video recording going until we get stopped out, and I'll come back and we'll roll the outro. There we go, we've now been stopped out by price action. Our stop loss has been set to NA, our trailing stop loss has been reset. If I open up my demo account and go to transaction history, we did in fact make a profit on this example trade just by trailing our stop loss below recent swing lows on this 1 minute chart. Now obviously where we entered was a terrible entry. This was for example purposes, but if we entered lower, like let's say on this bullish engulfing candle here, at this 1 minute structure, this sort of zone in here, and had this script running, you could have easily locked in a multiple R trade without even needing to be at your computer. The whole time I left this recording, I went to have lunch. I came back just in time to see it get stopped out, and I didn't even need to lift a finger. That is the power of AutoView and using this technology to enhance your trading. Trading is an extremely competitive arena. Only the best of the best truly excel in this craft. And one way that you can skew the odds in your favor is by utilizing the power of technology in your trading process. Be that through indicators, be that through automation like we just did here. Just having the ability to write your own scripts is a massive advantage over your average trader. But being able to automate parts of your trading process takes things truly to the next level. And I will see you soon in the next video. Thanks for watching and take care.